This is a journey into time. A journey which, along the way, will bring to you new colors, new dimensions, new values. We interrupt this broadcast to bring you a special news bulletin. What once was old can become brand new. Oh my gosh. Rehabs turn me on. Welcome to Building Back the Block with Bell. Sharon Bell. It's so fresh. It's so fresh.
Well, I'm here with my esteemed guest, John Borders from Borders and Borders. I've actually done 3 or 4
wonderful
closings there, and I've got one coming up next month.
Thank you very much.
And one of your attorneys, one of your new attorneys, is a member here at St. Stephen.
Yes, she is.
Yes,
she is. Ebony.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you know Ebony?
I do.
Yeah, we love Ebony.
Well, everybody loves Ebony.
Yeah,
she's hard not to like.
She is hard not to like.
So, I've been talking a little bit about redlining and public policies, and John is much more of an expert. I've dabbled in a few articles, but John knows it, and he's actually read the book. So
Well, and I brought the book that educated me the most thoroughly on the subject, which is The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. So I am embarrassed to say I was a practicing real estate attorney for about 30 years before I started to understand what redlining had done to our community. I've always cared about affordable housing issues, but I never bothered to go back and understand why things are as they are today. Why do we have the disparities of wealth that we have today? Why do we have such a difference between home ownership rates among white citizens and black citizens? You know, why is there such a disparity in wealth today? Especially when you look at home ownership and its importance in developing wealth, in building generational wealth, in leaving assets to your children, in having a nest egg that you can rely on if you lose a job, if you have a medical emergency. Those, kinds of things that people in the quote middle class have the ability to do because they own real estate. And there's such a disparity of home ownership that it's head scratching until you go back and you follow, this trajectory of what has happened in the United States all the way back from slavery up through today, and the things that have occurred not only from banks and lenders that are loaning money to people, but also ideologies that originated in the government and that were implemented by racist and white supremacists that were in the executive levels, the judicial levels, and the legislative branches of the government. And so it wasn't by accident. And that to me was really important for me to learn, because if I go back and I say, okay, well, it was a bunch of racists who made laws and created redlining maps that created disparities of wealth, then it's easy for me to say, well, that wasn't my fault.
Right. And you hear that a lot.
And you hear that a lot. And people all the time are like, oh, that was such a long time ago, and yet when I realized that it was my government that acts on behalf of me, that created opportunities for my parents that a lot of my black counterparts from my age didn't have, then I have a different sort of response to that. I have a different level of responsibility, I think, to engage in conversations like this and in opportunities to educate people about it, because I think people do care. And I think you have to start with education, and education then leads to an understanding of things. And when you have an understanding of things, you can start to have compassion about individuals have been affected by these things that are just patently unfair. On their face, they're unfair. They were, at many times, illegal and unconstitutional even when they occurred. Even when they were implemented by the government, they were unconstitutional. That's one of the things that Richard Rothstein argues, is that these were unconstitutional practices that occurred on the government's watch. So the government is engaging in unconstitutional behavior by the government in many cases. Yeah. And so I think it's really important for us to have these kinds of conversations so that we do come to an understanding about why things are as they are, so that we can then collectively, because it's going to take a collective effort for us to get to the point where where we start moving the needle, where we start to make up some of the disparities of wealth that we see in this city and that we're seeing around the country.
Well, tell me some of the details from the books.
Sure. So basically, the government wanted to create home ownership opportunities. Interestingly, this was around 1910, and they wanted to do it as a response to communism threats, because we thought that if we could build corporate America, and if we could build home ownership opportunities, people would be less inclined to be interested in policies like communism that might put too much power into the government and not enough into people's hands. And so the government wanted to create home ownership opportunities and also opportunities for people to have decent housing, which was something that was not very common at the time. So they built public housing.
Right, okay.
But when they built public housing, they segregated it by race. Okay, and they did that on purpose, and they were trying to encourage people to go to suburbs, but they were trying to encourage white people to move to the suburbs and not black people to move to the suburbs. And so we create this dichotomy of neighborhoods where you've got mostly black people and people of color living downtown, and in Louisville's instance, west of 9th Street, and white people moving outside of the inner city and into suburbs, where there were more opportunities. There was more opportunities to have a job. Most of the businesses moved out of downtown,
Right.
and so there were opportunities that were present there. And so the government created segregated housing, oftentimes in neighborhoods that were once segregated, and that were now being that were once integrated, that were now being forcibly segregated. So then, around 1937, the Homeowners Loan Corporation was created to create opportunities for people to buy homes by borrowing money. And so borrowing money, but borrowing it over time, because this was a new idea at the time, was that there's no way that people could afford to buy houses if they had to pay cash.
Right.
And there's no way that they could do it if they had to have 50% down, 30%, even 20% down. So the Homeowners Loan Corporation created an opportunity for there to be long-term mortgages that then people could afford to buy a house over time.
Yeah, I think if I read correctly, they used to be 10 to 15 years.
Yes.
And then slowly but surely we got to 30 years.
That's right.
Pretty soon, you can do a car over 8 years. So
Yes.
I'm pretty sure that sooner or later we'll be doing houses over 40
Exactly.
years.
Exactly.
Just so you can afford them.
That's
because
right.
the prices have moved up
That's
so much.
right.
Yeah.
So the Homeowners Loan Corporation not only, so they were designed to create homeownership opportunities, but they were designed to help white people to become homeowners. And we know that because they got together with real estate agents, some prominent ones in Louisville, appraisers, some prominent ones in Louisville, and lenders, some prominent ones at the time in Louisville. And they created maps that were designed to inform banks and mortgages and the government on which neighborhoods were safe to invest in and which ones were unsafe to invest in. And so this is what we call redlining. And if you look on the map here, the front page of the map, the color of law, you can see that certain neighborhoods, this is not Louisville, but Louisville's maps, thanks to the good work of Josh Poe, are published, and you
yes.
can find those online. And I encourage everybody to look up Louisville redlining maps, because it will blow your mind when you see these maps and the notes that correspond with it. So that when you go to the Louisville maps, you'll find the neighborhoods west of 9th Street that are deemed unsuitable for investment. And so when the government works to create maps, and the government says that these are risky neighborhoods you don't want to invest in, what do you think that the banks are going to do at that point? They're going to say, well, we can't invest in those neighborhoods because we can't take the risk. So that is literally what redlining is. It is the practice of creating maps and color coding them for which neighborhoods are safe to invest in and which ones are not safe to invest in. And if you look at the notes, if you hover over the map in Louisville, you can look at the notes, and the notes will have comments in the neighborhoods about whether you should invest in it and why. And one of the comments that just made me want to vomit was this neighborhood has low type inhabitants. So not low quality housing, but low type inhabitants. Like, what does that even mean? And if I'm a bank at that time and I have white supremacist notions, do I want to loan to a low type inhabitant? No, I want to loan money to someone who is, prominent in society and somebody who I know is going to be a safe risk because the government has told me it's a safe risk because this neighborhood is green and it's a neighborhood that I want to invest in. So that system that was created by the government in partnership with private interests created the maps that were used all over the country to create opportunities for or disincentives for investments in those neighborhoods. So businesses naturally would follow suit. They'd want to move into a neighborhood that was green, that was safe for investment, and a bank is going to want to make a loan to a business that goes into that neighborhood, safe for investment. They're going to look at the redlined ones. They're going to say, I'm not going to build in there. I'm not going to create, a business there. Certainly not going to loan money to a business there that is unsafe for investment. So that was probably the most significant thing that occurred with redlining. And then FHA and VA were created to allow borrowers not to have a big down payment.
Right.
So the government would then insure the loan of a lender. So you could go to a bank and the bank would make a loan to somebody who had maybe 2% down payment because the government was saying that we will insure that loan for the bank. That's what mortgage insurance does, is that it guarantees to the bank that if they make a loan that a borrower defaults on, then the bank will be paid back. And so FHA and VA relied on the redlining maps and made loans to individuals in the green zones, not in the red zones. So if you were gonna buy a house in America, then you might as well have to be white in order to get a loan, because if you didn't have 30% down to make a bank feel safe, then you weren't going to get an FHA insured loan. And the thing that really was unbelievable to me was that FHA didn't just tolerate deed restrictions that prohibited black people from living in the neighborhoods. FHA required those restrictions to be built in to the deed restrictions before they would loan money to a builder who wanted to build houses in those neighborhoods.
And so that's a federal.
That's a federal. And so then you end up with zoning laws, and you have a lot of zoning laws that basically put the toxic and polluting industries into poor black neighborhoods. The highway systems that we have today, right straight through. They're not through where I grew up in Hikes Point.
Oh, and what kind of trouble did we have trying to build a bridge in the East End?
Right. Exactly.
Well, don't even get me started.
Don't even get me started. Exactly. No,
Right.
it's so true. And so we created deed restrictions that prohibited people from living in certain neighborhoods, but then also zoning laws that zoned bad industries. When I say bad, I mean toxic environmental contaminants, like Rubbertown.
Rubbertown, right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Right there by Chickasaw Park.
That's right.
You're in a park playing with your kids, and not a rock throw from you is a whole industry spewing out whatever.
Exactly. And so we end up the same thing with public housing, and we create what essentially become ghettos, where it's only people who are poor and only people who are black who are living in the neighborhoods. Professor Rothstein talks a lot about that, about how it's not just home ownership opportunities, but it's also public housing. And the public housing, the environment is not suitable for, it's not the same kind of environment that you create in a suburb in terms of the health of a family. And so anyway, so it again, to sort of try to underscore it again, the point is that the government worked with private agencies, private individuals, created laws, created a system whereby there were incentives to invest in green neighborhoods. There were disincentives to build and to loan in red line neighborhoods, and so you could say, okay, that was a long time ago.
Right. So why do we care about that?
So why do we care about that today?
Talking about that in 2023.
Exactly, because that onion has so many layers that when you start to peel them away, you start to understand that A, it wasn't that long ago, and B, the neighborhoods that were redlined out of investment remain poor neighborhoods without opportunities, without businesses other than maybe liquor stores, without grocery stores and White House, exactly. And so you end up with neighborhoods that that lack a lot of the high quality businesses and opportunities that we see in suburbia America.
Hi everybody. We've been in the studio talking about redlining and other issues that have developed the issues that we have in the West End, and I thought it'd be a great idea for us to come out here and actually see where John works and see where the magic is made. So we're here at Borders and Borders Attorneys. They are real estate attorneys. They also do wills and elder care. So everybody, let's go in and see Borders and Borders. Well, hi, John.
How are you?
Nice to see you
Good
today.
to see you too.
Let's go on inside and you show us
Let's do
around.
it. Come on in.
John, show us around.
Come on in. Welcome to Borders and Borders. We are a family law firm. We've been in business for 52 years. So my dad started the business 1971, and then I joined in 1989, and then my brother in 1991. So we are a group of about 40 people and love serving the Louisville community. So come on in.
Yes, that'll be great. I appreciate that.
So these are our closing rooms. We've got 4 primary closing rooms, and each one is themed a little differently. We've got some underwater images here. This is our favorite room. This is the Bud Dorsey room. So we have images from that Bud Dorsey had taken. Of course, the photographer for 40 years with the Louisville Defender. And you've got Muhammad Ali photo up there, and then also Muhammad Ali building up there as well. And then our next closing room, we have art from Chris Porter. Chris Porter is a Mississippi artist, and she has really vibrant artwork that we love. And then we've got 2 more closing rooms. We've got this one, which features the picture of the building where my dad's business first started. 1971, rented a space there, and then finally the last closing room, which has more artwork from an underwater photographer, Hunter Foy. And then in the back, this is where all the action happens. We've got Ann in the hallway here.
Hi.
Jenny Fields in here.
Hey.
Always at work looking up statutes. We've got Mara in here. We've got my brother Harry on the phone here. And then we've got production staff here and also in the basement. So this is where it all happens, trying to serve the needs of the community. And like I said, for 50 years, so glad to be here and glad to welcome you to our office and our home.
Well, that's our tour of Borders and Borders. All the contact information will be in the information below the video. And it was really exciting to see where the action happens. And we're going to go back to the rest of the interview in studio.
When the Fair Housing Act was voted on and passed in 1968, it was a landmark piece of legislation. Why? people had been trying for a long time before that, and it was in and out of committee. It was very contentious. It was the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King a week before the bill passed that really provided the impetus to do it, because all of a sudden a lot of people who were in opposition began to recognize, you know, this is a real problem. Maybe I didn't think it was a problem because it wasn't affecting me, but it really is affecting me, because if we're unfair to anybody, ultimately we're unfair to everybody.
It became really very clear to a progressive president like Lyndon Johnson that the federal government needed to create a focal point for thinking about the cities, thinking about civil rights, thinking about economic justice, thinking about concentrated poverty.
Word came from Capitol Hill that Congress had passed and sent to the White House the Civil Rights Act of 1968. Included in the measure was a landmark open housing bill, which, when fully effective, would forbid discrimination in approximately 80% of all housing offered for rent or for sale in the United States.
I do not exaggerate when I say that the proudest moments of my presidency have been times such as this, when I have signed into law the promises of a century.
I still have a dream. One day men will no longer see racial integration as a problem, but as an opportunity to participate in the beauty of diversity.
I think the real difficulty that we have, though, is in white America, is understanding that the things that occurred prior to 2023 have an impact on the way things look in 2023. That's where I think the real, because
disconnect.
That's where the disconnect
I
is.
never did that.
Exactly.
So because I never did it, don't worry about it. But
Right.
if you hit me,
Right.
and I break a limb,
Right.
that limb is forever
That's right.
weaker than the other limb.
That's right. Absolutely.
So I'm going to be impacted by things that have occurred.
Absolutely. There's no way that we're ever really going to move forward until there is some form of reparations that have been made for all of the opportunities that have been robbed of Black America. I mean, starting with slavery, which was not that long ago. When you consider from 1619 until the late 1800s, there was more time when there was slavery than there hasn't been. And then you go into Reconstruction, where it looks like things are going to get better for Black America,
and then here we
until the federal government in the Compromise of 1877 says, well, we're going to remove the federal troops from the South, and now what happens? The KKK comes out of the woodworks, and convict leasing, the practice of taking people who are in prison and making them basically a slave to work for somebody, those things that occurred, and then the theft of land that occurred, because
and still occurring, because we talked about that before we went on,
and it's still occurring.
Exactly.
Yeah. But those things have an impact. I mean, education comes from opportunity, and opportunity comes in part from wealth and wealth building and generational wealth building, and so you can't do that to people without there being repercussions. You can't. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter if the issue is race or if it's sex or gender or whatever it is. You can't do that wholesale removal of opportunity from people and not have repercussions that occur from it, and nobody likes to talk about, nobody in politics likes to talk about reparations. There's been a bill proposed for, every year that never goes anywhere because it's the big R word that no one seems to want to address, but fundamentally as a society, I don't think we're ever going to really move on with a true racial reckoning until we have some system of apologizing for what occurred and then doing something to redress those concerns as well.
Well, I think that's a good spot to stop. because yeah, you know, the reparations train can take you down a wrong track for sure.
Well, it
But
can,
John,
but
you have been wonderful.
Thank you.
You have talked about this. I would say the only person that's even come close is Josh. So Josh will be very proud of how you handled this.
Josh is definitely one of my and I don't know Josh personally, but his work has mentored me to understanding it in Louisville. So I don't know a fraction of what he knows about it. He's been doing this for a lot longer than I have.
And he grew weary and he's gone in a different direction.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put some of that information in with this episode so people can find out what's happening now. Because unfortunately, things just look different, but the results always end up the same, with people losing their houses and those houses being turned over to large corporations that are white-owned and run.
Absolutely.
And,
well, I think it's really important. Let me just say this, and that is that there is help out there oftentimes. And so a lot of times it's just a matter of knowing where to find the help. Okay. And so there are organizations like the Urban League that are great at, if they don't have the resources, they can help you to find the resources. So if your house is being foreclosed on, don't just, bury your head and let it be foreclosed on. Seek the resources. The Legal Aid Society is available to help some folks in foreclosure situations. Call me and I'll try to get you to somebody who can help as well. There are opportunities and there are resources that are available. It's just that most people don't know about them.
Right.
And
they just give up.
They just give up. You die, or you have a family member who dies and the house is stuck in their name and you don't know how to get out of their name. I get that call all the time. A great-grandfather owned this property. It's been in his name. He's been dead for 40 years. What can we do with this house? We want to sell it.
Instead of letting it just sit there and
just letting it sit there and build up
the state just takes
that's
it
right,
and then they
it's
sell it
yeah.
to
Anyway,
the Russell program. But anyway, I'm not going to get into that, which is probably for the best, because that really makes me mad. But anyway, so thank you so much for joining us today on Building Back the Block. And I had the best guest for my first episode, John Borders. Everybody knows Borders and Borders. If you've ever bought or sold any real estate, especially if you're an investor here in Louisville, they're excellent.
Thank you.
And they're continuing to do a great job here in the city. And now, after meeting one of their key representatives, you know why, because they really care about people and they care about the community. And I couldn't have done a better first episode than this one. Thank you, and I hope to see everybody next week as we will continue the conversation and hopefully provide information that can help you build back your block. Bye.